Shalom. Welcome back to our online School of Biblical and Jewish Studies. We've been looking at understanding the issue of the Israel and Palestinian problem, trying to get a basis for deciding what is the correct position to take and why. Now, up to this point, we've learned many things. Our last lesson, we established very clearly from historical documents, from the writings of Arab leaders, for example, from that French dictionary, and other sources, the passport that was issued by the British during the Mandate Territory to Jewish people stamped Palestinian, that clearly Palestinians prior to 1948, when Israel became a nation, were understood to be Jewish people. And Palestine would have been the land of Israel, not a Palestinian national entity. There has never been a Palestinian state when you're speaking of an Arab state. And Arab leaders clearly, throughout history, have said that we are part of Syria, Greater Syria, the southern part of Syria. And we reject the label of Palestine and us being Palestinians. Well, that would change. It would change in 1964, in May of that year, with the establishment of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. Now, at that time, they adopted their national covenant. It has been reconfirmed at every subsequent meeting of the Palestinian National Council, every meeting to this very day. The main theme of that national covenant is that only Arabs are entitled to self-determination in that area of the world, and that the state of Israel has no right whatsoever to exist. Article 1 of that covenant, Palestine is the homeland of the Palestinian Arab people, and an integral part of the great Arab homeland. Now, this was the time period in history that the Arab world, and specifically those within Israel, started to embrace the understanding that there was a Palestinian nation state of Arabs and an Arab Palestinian people that was displaced by the Jewish people in the nation of Israel. This covenant clearly calls for the area of Palestine to be a homeland only of the Arab people. Article 15 of that covenant states, the liberation of Palestine is a national duty to repulse the Zionist and to purge the Zionist presence from Palestine. Eradicate the Jews, drive them into the sea, purge completely their presence from the land of what they would call the Arabs, Palestine. In Article 19, it says this, the partitioning of Palestine in 1947 and the establishment of Israel is fundamentally null and void. Article 21, the Arab Palestinian people reject all solutions which are substitutes for the total liberation of Palestine, ridding it of all Jews and only Arabs being there. And finally, Article 33 of this covenant says that this charter shall not be amended save by a vote of 2/3 of the total membership of the National Congress, roughly about 400 people, of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, taken at a special session convened for that purpose. It was at this time again that the concept of Palestinian Arab refugees was raised as a propaganda tool by the PLO. Every meeting of that committee of the PLO since 1964 has always continued the acceptance of this covenant. It has never been changed. It has never been modified. It has never been voted on by the total membership. That is still the purpose of the Palestinian Authority today, the PLO, as it was named previously, founded in 1964. And we will see as we go through a little bit more modern day history that the goal of the Palestinians, the leadership, is still the same. The eradication of the Jewish people from that land and the establishment of one state, Arab Palestinian state. Now, where is Palestine? When the Arabs speak of Palestine, what are they referring to? Now, what they mean is the entire area of Israel west of the Jordan River. You can see the map of Israel on the side of this screen. And you can see the Dead Sea, that bigger body of water, and then up towards the top of the map, the Sea of Galilee. The Jordan River would run down there. And everything west of that, save the West Bank, is Israel. But when they speak of Palestine today, they are speaking of everything west of the Jordan River. What we have here in this picture is the symbol of Fatah. Now, supposedly, this emblem of this group, and this group supposedly being a moderate Palestinian group, Fatah, but notice the hands holding the guns, but covering the area of Palestine, that green area. It's the entire land of modern Israel. That's what they believe is Palestine. They want all of it. In 1973, Israel won an amazing war. In 1967, let me back up first. In 1967, they won an amazing war, the Six-Day War. And the Arabs were roundly, totally defeated at that war. 6 years later, in 1973, the Yom Kippur War, it's called the Yom Kippur War, Day of Atonement, because it began on October 6, 1973, on the Day of Atonement. A coalition of Arab forces launched a surprise attack on Israel, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. On October 26, 20 days later, the fighting came to an end. The Yom Kippur War claimed the lives of 2,569 IDF soldiers, 7,500 wounded. Another 301 soldiers who were taken captive later returned to Israel. Some of the famous military personnel in the Six-Day War and later, Moshe Dayan and that general, he had one eye, the patch, and Ariel Sharon. But that amazing victory in 1967 turned to almost the defeat of Israel in 1973. It was looking extremely desperate for Israel, the beginning of the war. But that war changed directions. By the end of the war, Israel was on the outskirts of Damascus, Syria. They were close to Cairo, Egypt. When Russia put pressure on the U.S. to put pressure on Israel to stop, and they did, the Arab world had thought they were going to defeat Israel in the Yom Kippur War. It was only at the end that things turned around, and they were again defeated by the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, the nation of Israel. And they didn't fulfill their desire at this point of destroying Israel. But they didn't change their plans. Next summer, June 9th, 1974, realizing that they were not able militarily to defeat Israel, the PLO came up with a stages plan. The PLO was born with a commitment to the destruction of Israel. In the early days of the organization, they would consider nothing other than the immediate objective, the destruction militarily. But the October 73 Yom Kippur War convinced the Arabs that they would not be able to destroy Israel through military action within its post-1967 boundaries. Thus, they embarked upon a new three-stage strategy for Israel's destruction. Ultimately, this would be expanded to 10 stages. But this was embodied in the PLO's 1974 political program, commonly known as the phased plan or the stages plan. It was adopted at the 12th session of the Palestinian National Council held in Cairo on June 9, 1974. That plan lay dormant for 14 years. In 1988, the PLO revitalized the phases or stages plan that they had concocted back in 1974. The PNC met and they passed a resolution proclaiming the, quote, establishment of the State of Palestine in the Israeli-occupied territories with Holy Jerusalem as its capital. Salah Khalaf, who at that time was the number 2 PLO leader, said, quote, the PNC resolutions refine the Palestinian position as adopted in the phased program 14 years ago. The PNC session was intended to revitalize this program and to promote a mechanism that will get it moving. I remember at that time how the world was so excited when the PLO came out for the first time since their founding in 1964, said, we recognize the existence of Israel. The world said this was a major step towards peace. Israel was not at all excited about that announcement. Basically, their response was, our existence has been a reality for 40 years, since 1948. And your covenant and this statement that you have just made nowhere says that you recognize the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state. It was a propaganda tool. It was the revitalization of the phased program. It was getting it started again. In December of 1988, Khalaf told a Kuwaiti newspaper that the PNC statehood declaration meant, quote, First a small state, then with the help of Allah, it will be made large and expand to the east, the west, the north, and the south. Close quote. He told the newspaper that he was interested in the liberation of Palestine, quote, step by step. The revitalization of the phases or the stages program in 1988 continues to this very day. And we will see that as we move through modern history in the Israel-Palestinian issue. Nothing has changed except perhaps the naivety of the nations of the world believing that the Palestinian Arabs are the victims in this. Israel is the bully, and pressure being put on Israel to acquiesce to the demands of the Palestinian Authority. But the plans hatched in 1964, changed in 1974 with the Phases program, revitalized in 1988. 30 years later, in 2018, marches on. We'll continue our look at this subject the next time we get together.